All righty. Man, time is screaming by. I'm not trying to, make people nervous, but we'll talk about the um, paper, the term paper. Again, I mean, this is kind of a license to steal in my mind. I don't insist on a particular format. What I do insist upon is that it kind of explain, um, you know, your strategy or somebody, in similar circumstance to you, how you're going to sort out your kind of financial future. I'm not looking for any of your personal details, and the situation or whatever that you're going to lay out on the term paper may or may not exactly coincide to your personal situation, because for most of you, you know, as college students, you're trying to kind of forecast about 5 years ahead of you to where you're immersed in your career and you're making, reasonable career oriented kind of money, and you're trying to get ahead, which you're encountering some obstacles that the boomers probably didn't have. This is a whole different environment, and it's going to be challenging for those who don't plan. And but that's not any excuse to throw your hands up and say, well, I can't control it. I'm just going to do the best I can because whatever. I come from a military background, and if you have no plan, whatever, you will fail. If you have a plan, then you have a starting point and you modify and you figure it out. But especially, I flew fighters and stuff is just happening so quick in the air. If you haven't thought about it beforehand, you're not going to think about it in the air. I mean, whatever. They talk about, zero G and zero airspeed because, we used to fly less than 100 feet, 540 knots. I mean, it was crazy. And anyway, this was back in my Weasel days when you could do that in the F4G. But anyway, if you hadn't already thought about it the night before, in the Air Force they called it chair flying, thinking about what you're going to do before you actually get out there to do it. So anyway, so what is this? 10 seconds, we're off into a tangent already. But today we're talking about retirement planning. Now, retirement planning is this isn't anything new. We've kind of been talking about retirement planning from day one when I talk about the time value of money and how it's going to build for you. Now, the reason why I emphasize retirement is because again, I know, for a typical somebody in their 20s are like, that is so far away. That's like 40 years away. Well, guess what? If you start building a nest egg for your retirement, obviously you get hit by a truck or something in between now and then, but um, that's why it's important to use it, you know, all the time. So this nest egg that is intended for your retirement, hopefully throughout the course of your life, you'll leverage against it. And so I am, well, actually, I'm getting that age where, into getting close to retiring. And I can tell you from having traveled quite a bit, you don't want to put off travel until you're old enough and the kids are taken care of and your careers are no, you need to travel now sooner rather than later because I've especially in Europe, I see these especially in Ireland for some reason, you see these poor Americans that are just, they they're they're done, they're spent, their bodies are completely worn out and they're trying to travel, and that should not be you. So, travel young, travel early. They can never take it away from you. I'm trying to find the microphone here to figure out why this thing isn't loud enough. Anyway, um, anyway, what I'm saying is to set money aside for your retirement, but that nest egg will provide you peace of mind and something to take loans against, something to give you kind of the you know again the peace of mind, which I don't know what the vernacular would be, but something like kind of FU money, where if you're in a bind with a job and you're not happy with your, life circumstance, if you have money set aside, you can go ahead and make that career change, that geographic change, that whatever change, and not be, you know, whatever whatever the current term is for somebody who's unhoused, in a heartbeat. So anyway, all good things. Social Security. Social Security is not going to give you that peace of mind. For some people, it does. Some people think, oh, I've got my Social Security. I'm good. I don't need to save for retirement. Part of your term paper, if you want to do well on it, is to look into Social Security and look at how much money Social Security would provide you. And, you know, unless you're somebody who's looking forward to, eating top ramen in the dark and you know, whatever, watching a lot of TV and just being bitter, Social Security is not the way to go. You may end up in that situation and make the best of it. But again, we're talking about planning. We're talking about, you've got your life ahead of you and you're going to do the best you can. The Social Security folks are completely upfront that, yeah, this money is probably not going to allow for the retirement that you would, expect. And also, if you think that there's some, because you got a Social Security number and an account, that there's some pot of money set aside for you, and it's got your name on it, no politician could ever touch it. You are so wrong. That money, the Social Security fund, gets rated constantly, and it's probably going to be means tested, meaning that if you're somebody who does plan for retirement and puts aside a bunch of money, you're probably maybe determined at some point, ineligible for Social Security, which I know is a foul. It's completely unfair, but you paid into it. But if you look at the amount of money in the Social Security system, it's not enough. And it's not like the people who didn't save are getting one over on you, because their lifestyle is going to be even more meager than what I've alluded to. All right. On a brighter note, qualifying for Social Security. Yep. So it all has to do with qualifications. But this also, Social Security, also available for disabled, which, oh, by the way, if you've seen these, there's a couple kind of Yahoo kind of lawyers that what they do, their purpose in life and their little niche is to get people from, disability that may be funded at the state or local level, and transfer them over to Social Security, which is a federal program. So what it means for Social Security, it puts another, you know, burden on Social Security. But what it means for these lawyers is the states will pay them literally $1,500 per person, that they can get, somebody with whatever disability. And it could be genuine, but anyway, get them put on the federal rolls and get them taken off the county or the state rolls. So it, but it just means that Social Security, ends up paying for people who probably didn't get their 40 credits and do all the rest of the other bit. Survivors benefits, so one-time benefits, monthly income pay if your spouse is 60 or older, child under 16. So you can see there's other folks that are, you know, getting money through the program. And I'm not saying that folks shouldn't get money, but Social Security, if you're thinking about it as a retirement system for those who've worked, there's other folks drawing from it. Retirement benefits. So reduced benefits at age 62. If I'm lucky enough to get to 62, I will be there day one trying to get my money. You can get more if you wait, but again, number one, the whole hit and by bus theory, but also, if I can get the money earlier, I think I can invest it better than perhaps the federal government. But that's a decision you'll have to make. But no money until 62, and then 65 to 67. Limited income, which is nice, because what this means is it doesn't disincentivize the person who says, I'm just barely scraping by with Social Security. I want to get another job. But the way the system used to be was, we would take your Social Security if you actually have income from another source, which wasn't quite fair. If the person wants to work, they should be able to work without being penalized. Um, so concerns, I think I hit on that. People have lived longer, number of retirees grows, many people relying less on Social Security and the smart people are relying less. And then I could go back and again, I'm not against, you know, young, it's almost like orphans getting money and disabled people getting money, but my problem would be that it's coming from Social Security because that fund is not going to be able to provide for the people that are pretty much 100% reliant upon it. So the big picture is on Social Security. You want to have a blurb in your term paper to say, I've looked at Social Security. This is roughly the monthly amount I would, you know, get through Social Security, and I've decided that's not a viable option or whatever. But again, I'm not trying to drive your paper, but at least don't realize that you're going to be living a extravagant lifestyle on Social Security. It's kind of tough. I have some folks who work with me, work for me, and they definitely are the best employees ever because they don't want to just deal with the Social Security. They have, well, outside of my employment, they have like $50 a month extra, and so they're very motivated. Not that I take advantage of it, but it's just, they're good people. Anyway, so the website, you can go through there, and again, they're the first to tell you that they're not going to overestimate, the amount of money that is available. Employer sponsored retirement plans. So, yeah, this gets back to a problem. If you and we've kind of created the problem ourselves, employees. If employer is going to offer somebody, say, 100 grand with no benefits, or 80,000 with full benefits, most people will jump right to the 100 grand for the full benefit with no benefits. So employers have been incentivized to cut back on benefits and offer more in terms of salary. So the employee-sponsored retirement plans have definitely been cut back. There's also a notion of a thing called vesting, which means, let's say, typical thing, saving for 401k or an IRA or something like that. You're employed by the firm and you put up 4% and the firm will match it at 6%. So that is a no-brainer. Do whatever you got to do to put in your 4% to get that 6% from the employer. But the caveat is that the penalty is imposed for early withdrawal. So let's say you took that 6%, and let's say, again, just for even numbers, you're making 100 grand, you got 6 grand from the employer. So you're not working for 100 grand, you're actually working for 106, which is a great thing. But if you leave after a year or 6 months, you get nothing. And it depends on the vesting plan. They'll be up front, they'll tell you what it is. Typically it's like, 0 to 3 years, you walk away with nothing. After 3 years, you get 50%. After 5 years, you get it all. So, they're not stupid. They know that they kind of, own you for that period, because at the end of, let's say, 4.5 years, and you put away, you've got that 6% that they matched. That's 6 times 5. That's 30 grand that well, anyway, 15 grand since they matched it half it. But anyway, they still exercise some control, which they will exercise. All right. Your retirement contributions are tax deferred, but taxes ordinary income after retirement. So the notion here with anything 401k or any of these plans is that the plan, when you're, I'm just checking to make sure the audio is still going, is that your tax rate when you're in life later on, is going to be lower because you're going to be pretty much retired, right? So your only income would be your retirement or your withdrawals from your 401k. So let's say you're making, 50 grand, 70 grand, something like that in your retirement, and you're making 150 at the end of your career, your tax rate would be lower. If you're somebody who doesn't believe in that, then you're probably better off not doing the 401k or the IRA. But the whole point of a 401k or an IRA is tax deferred, meaning that you're not paying taxes on it right now, but you will pay it when you withdraw. Okay. So, and so anyway, that's how it works. This is a 401k and IRA, not a Roth IRA. Roth IRA, there is no tax deferment. You put in after tax money, but when you withdraw the money, um, that's tax free. So Roths are pretty awesome. I've got a Roth with some property in it that's appreciating pretty well. Okay, for some reason I rolled the wrong direction. Um, there we go. So the first one was this, employee sponsored one. Second one here we're talking about is defined benefit plan. A specific amount when you retire based upon years of employment. A defined benefit plan. This is kind of like old school, like you work for GM back in the 50s, and you just suck it up and you stay there, and you get a certain amount of money for your retirement with you out actually not having to save money. Those things are pretty rare. They exist maybe in the public sector more, because there's more unions in the public sector actually than there are in the private sector now. But anyway, and here's this term vested that I talked about before. So having a claim to a portion of the money in the employer-sponsored retirement that has been reserved for you upon your retirement, even if you leave the company. So again, there's going to be terms with this vested. It's not like you walk in day one and are vested. No, you have to, whatever the company. I mean, it's competitive, but I think that standard thing about 0 to 3, you get nothing. After 3, you get 50%, and after 5, you get it all. A couple, at least in the defense contractor sector, that's what they were doing. Defined contribution plan. So getting a little bit less lavish, specifies guidance under which you can contribute that allows to invest in funds you wish. So again, you are contributing. It's not all on the employer. More typical these days. Decision to contribute. Well, we go through anything retirement later. People always wait too long to save. They don't start saving early. They don't contribute from every paycheck. They think they'll just do it when they get a bonus or something. None of that works. You have to start early. And yeah, benefits of defined contribution plan. So it's like extra income. Like I said, the person who just blows it, they're off whatever. You're contributing your 4% to get your 6% match, and in your coworkers, in Vegas, hookers and blow, and he's working for $6,000 a year less than you are. So do whatever you got to do to hit that match. Investing in funds your retirement account. So yeah, so they'll usually pick a company. And again, like I said, I ended up with Voya, which is not a great company in my mind. It's a Dutch company. They talk about orange money. Orange is a very, you know, Dutch color. Orange Revolution. Well, anyway, it has to do with religion and some other things. But anyway, it's just I look at their website, and given a choice of about 12, 15 equal companies, I would never choose Voya. But that's the one that, in this case, Booz Allen Hamilton chose, and so fair enough. And so, but under that umbrella, I'm able to choose from all the funds that those people have to offer. Plus, this is interesting, is that they also allow to put 50% of my money in a self-directed account, meaning I can buy my own stocks, which is a good thing, but their weak funds never keep up with my individual investing. So I put that 50% in there, but I'm never able to add to it because their fund lags behind. And the amount that I put in my individual account, I don't know, is at least 70, 75%. And so it's completely out of balance because my investments, me picking stocks, has done much better than them. But anyway, that's aside. Decision to okay, why does it keep rolling backwards? Okay, so this is what they're going to say. Yeah, high risk when you're young because you can handle the volatility. Medium risk, and then here you're, getting old. You can't handle a couple burbles, and so whatever. It's for me. I'm always been in high risk, and in fact, I've got riskier as I've gotten older. So each to his own. But the theory is that the volatility that you'll see in high risk investments, older folks, that are living paycheck to paycheck off of their investments. But hopefully you'll be in a position where, you know, this is, hopefully the children's inheritance. Anyway, here's a 401k in 2020. That's how much you can contribute. So let's say you're making that 100 grand again. You could appear to the IRS to be making basically 80 grand and being taxed as somebody making 80 grand. If you're older, you can make even higher contributions. So catch up type things. Tax penalty, if you're below 59 and a half and you withdraw money, withdrawals, yeah, you'll get penalized. They'll charge you 10% plus they'll add that income and tax it at your normal rate. But you can take loans against it all day. Typically, the loans always do, or you can't go higher than 50% of your balance. And the interest rate is nominal and it's paid to you, not to the bank. So it's huge. Um, Matching. So again, if they talk about match, you are leaving money on the table. You are working for less than your coworkers if you can't scrape that money together. So the 10% penalty I mentioned, the Roth IRA. Keep in mind that, politicians, again, whatever, I'm a little bit older than most of you, so the level of cynicism is quite a bit higher, but they don't view this as your money. They would definitely like to eliminate some of these items. And a Roth IRA is just, it's pretty amazing. There's limits on how much you can have in your Roth IRA, but contributions taxed when contributed. So it's after tax money, but not when withdrawn. So that can just be, I mean, it can go up tenfold, a 10x gain that is legally not taxable. It's pretty amazing. 403p. So what happens is there's different plans written for different folks. If you're a nonprofit, so let's say, or working for a nonprofit, which also educators kind of get rolled into that as well, you get your own version of a 401k, but in this case, it's a 403b. Not a big difference. SEPs, kind of self-employed people that aren't. If you want to do some tax deferred investing, regardless whether you're self-employed, work for a corporation, as a teacher, whatever, there's probably some vehicle. So whether it be a SEP, a 401k, a 403b, it's generally a pretty good idea. Simple, same sort of thing. 100 employees or less. Why is it flicking around? I'm not doing that. Golly. My apologies. SEP. Simple. Profit sharing. Profit sharing can happen. I've never worked for an employer that did profit sharing, but anyway, profit formula. I have done a number of employee stock purchase programs. I really disliked the company I was working for. Perhaps that's why I quit. But anyway, what they did was they offered me the ability to buy their stock, the company stock, at a 5% discount. And I kind of did the math. And with my salary and all, I was making about 900 bucks extra a year. I mean, which isn't huge money. But what I would do was I'd buy the stock at their 5% discount. I could do up to 10% of my salary and I'd sell it the next day. Because I'm already working for the company. I'm already pretty much invested in that company in my mind. And to have my investments with that same company, it's a private company, doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of diversification. But anyway, I did it for, I don't know, probably 5 years that I worked for them. And I'd buy the maximum amount at, I think it was the maximum amount. Yeah, I buy it and at a 5% discount. So, it's trading for like 60 bucks a share and boom, I'm making 5% on my money by selling the stuff the next day. And they're such a big, faceless corporation. They don't care, they don't track it. And it it was just worked perfect. So, employee stock ownership program. More risky because it's not diversified. Not if you sell it the next day. My my diversification was pretty good. So leaving the employer. Okay, so there's a couple key terms. We talked about withdrawal, and I kept hitting on that term withdrawal. The typical thing for a lot of you is you're going to work for multiple employers, which that's just the nature of the work, and sometimes that's a good thing. But what you want to do, at least in most 99% of the cases, is to roll over your IRA from one account to another. You don't want to withdraw it. If you ever get a check from one of your retirement accounts that's made out specifically to you, you kind of have a problem. You've done a withdrawal, which unless you're 59 and a half, is going to be subject to that 10% penalty. So typically, those checks should say whatever your name is for the benefit or whatever, the new company that's going to for the benefit of, and it'll have the new brokerage firm, and it's a rollover. You haven't changed the characterization of that money from retirement funds to, personal money. So I've done this with property. At one point, I think I had, I don't know, a couple, three different pieces of property, all held under IRA. Um, it depends on market conditions, but when the market is booming, I was involved in some funds that, you know, one stock went up 521% in a year, and there was no way it was going to keep that up. So what I did was I sold that. I put it in um, a real estate IRA, bought some property, and because real estate's a lot more stable than stocks. And anyway, I recently I'm working on transferring that to personal use, but again, that's deliberate. It's not by accident. So rollover and withdrawal are two different things. Typically, if you're less than retirement age, you want to roll it over and keep it in the IRA, 401k, whatever status, and not for personal use. If you happen to screw that up, you will be taxed and penalized. So not good. Okay, so you can, yeah, transfer to your new employer, roll over. Keyword, transfer assets while avoiding penalties. Keogh, another thing, kind of a variation of this for self-employed. SEP, same sort of thing. Traditional IRA. So if somebody just says IRA, it's a traditional IRA. If it's a Roth IRA, that's that other, it's a completely different animal that you are investing after tax money that's already been taxed. You know, we saw how the limits went up, the catch-up contributions, and if you screw this up before you're 59 and a half, you're going to be paying a penalty. Roth IRA. So again, there's limits on how much you can put in a Roth IRA, but for most of us, I really appreciate that I put in money in a Roth IRA. Roth and traditional. So again, to reiterate, sheltered till withdrawn, tax-free in a Roth IRA. So again, if you're, and for most of us, I mean, you'll live probably a longer, better life. Granted, you're doing something you like, but if you don't necessarily retire, if you stay active, um, having a 401k or an IRA may not be as beneficial because if you're still making big money into retirement, when you start withdrawing from that IRA, it's going to be taxed at your current level. And if you're still making good money, you didn't accomplish much with the 401k. But anyway, and then also it has to do with your approach to what you think about, taxes and government, whether taxes are going to go up in the future. If you're of the opinion that taxes are going to go way up in the future, you're probably better off not doing the 401k, but most people don't see that. Annuity, annuity is, they throw it in here. An annuity in its basic sense means a series of annual payments. It often gets lumped in with insurance talk, and insurance companies will sell them to you. And it's not that the annuity is a bad investment. It's just that they're kind of complex, and this agent has to explain it to you, and he's getting a commission, he or she, and so that's not a great thing. But what you do, it's if you want to think about annuities in a simple sense, it's kind of the reverse of life insurance. You know, in order to get money from life insurance, you got to die. In order to keep getting money from an annuity, you got to continue living. So in that sense, annuities are kind of a positive thing. What you're doing is, let's say you give an insurance company or whoever's offering the annuity, say $10,000, and they start making you a series of $100 a month payments. Well, if you're going to live, many years, it should probably be more than $100. But anyway, that series of payments is a good thing. If you die next week, that wasn't such a good investment. You get a big chunk of money and you only lived long enough to get a couple of payments. So anyway, and then there's also, deferred annuities where you give them a big chunk of money now and you get nothing for 5 years, and then the payments start, they'd be somewhat higher. So there's a lot of moving parts, kind of a complex product, and it's nothing I've really looked at, but they're out there and offered. Variable annuity, how much you get paid depends on how well that investment's doing. And so high fee, where does that high fee come from? Because it's complex, because there's a salesman involved. And surrender charge if you decide to try and, grab money early, if it's, sort of like a bond where they're holding your money and they're going to give it back to you at some point in the future, but you want it now, you'd have to pay more. Commission salespeople. Look for no load annuities, or anyway, the fees are going to be a critical part of an annuity if you decide to go that way. Estimating your future retirement savings. So these silly charts are not near as good as what we present in those Excel spreadsheets on the first couple of days. They do highlight the fact that you can get quite a bit of money. This person, 6% annual return in 40 years. So you turn $1,000 into 10,000. Anyway, or this is how much they're investing and how much they end up with in retirement. My apologies. So $1,000 is just short of 200 grand, 180 or so, and $10,000 if you were to put that away is not quite, 1.5 million, I guess. So $5,000 annual investment. So this is getting closer to what we talked about in the charts. Again, I'm not trying to blow these off, but go back and look at the spreadsheets and, kind of reacquaint yourself with the power of compound investing, compound interest. Whoops. Golly. It's the same mouse, same computer I've been using the whole time, but for some reason it's really flickering around tonight. Tax benefits for retirement account. Yeah, 25% rate. Your tax rate would be quite high. Okay, so that, it's not really any new information. It's just sort of talks about retirement and some of the specific vehicles, 401ks and 403bs, Roth IRAs. Estate planning, you've checked out at this point. You're gone. And so retirement was while you were still living. Estate planning is for your beneficiaries, for your heirs. Estates of a deceased person. So the way this will typically happen is that, upon your death, assuming you had a will, hopefully you had a will, should have had a will, your money would probably go into some sort of trust. Your bills would be paid, and then the amounts that are remaining would be distributed per the instructions of your will. So that's how it works. So a will, it only means one thing, a legal request of how your estate should be distributed. So it's done by the state. If you, write up some note or make some agreement with somebody, that's not a will. A will is what's recognized in that state. And Alaska being like most states, it's a legal document that's got signatures and a witness and all the rest of it. So they'll talk about a will in a general sense, but you have, you know, basically, screwed your beneficiaries and created a huge foul if you did not take care of this. So again, for young people with nobody dependent upon it, not a big deal. If you're older, it's pretty irresponsible to die what they call intestate, meaning lacking a will. And the court, just kind of frowns upon it. The court is like, wow, this person didn't care enough to, write a will, have that taken care of, and so, we're busy and he's going to the bottom, he or she's going to the bottom of the list, and how it all gets distributed, whatever. They're not going to be, it all ends up in a state court called probate. Probate is this process of deciding how, these estates are distributed. And the probate courts are busy, and it's probably not glamorous work anyway. And they're going to take care of people who have got their affairs in order, and not give a lot of attention to people who did not. So anyway, do yourself a favor. Make sure you have a a will that can be found by your heirs, and everything will go quite nicely. And the probate court just kind of blesses it. They don't actually get involved. So distribute it as you desired. So you needed a will for that. Beneficiaries, the people who are going to get that money. Intestate, the people that who didn't have any sort of will. Appointed administrator, probably not the top graduate out of their legal class. Probably somebody who's not enjoying their whatever. Enough said, but don't do that. Making the decisions. Yeah. No, you need to have a will. It's something you should do. So you got to be of age, mentally competent, not under undue influence, signed and dated. So it needs to look like a proper will. 2 or 3 witnesses who are not beneficiaries. You don't have to know these people. What you do, if you want to get a will, maybe contact a paralegal or somebody locally. It doesn't necessarily need to be a lawyer. I mean, it needs to be somebody who's got skills for that, but it doesn't need to be, the person whose name is on the sign out there. This is not that difficult. But anyway, they'll probably have some sort of, Word or PDF document for you to fill in all the particulars. You send it to them. They type it up, make it look nice. They call you into the office. They, a couple schlubs or secretaries or whatever walking around the office. They come over. They witness it. You don't know these people, but it doesn't matter. It's all legal. It's signed. And then you walk out of there with, you know, not spending a tremendous amount of money and you've got a will. And make it pretty general and it doesn't need to be done over and over again. So I wouldn't do it online. And attorney, you know, somebody with legal skills. So probably somebody in an attorney's office, but a regular attorney is in the neighborhood of 250 an hour or so. And one of the people who's got some skills, who's administratively smart, a what are we calling this thing? The name escapes me right now. But the person who works in the legal office, who does those things, paralegal. The paralegal, somebody without the actual legal, jurisprudence kind of document diploma, but perfectly competent of taking care of a will, helps you out, and you're on your way. Simple will, traditional will. Anyway, don't make it too particular. You can say my spouse, and I don't know. I think generally, if you get remarried, you probably have to do a new will. But if, say, you just because you could use language like equally amongst my children rather than specified names and things like that, in case you happen to have another child, you don't have to run off and do a new will. And if it doesn't really change the intent to list specific addresses and pieces of real estate, it's probably going to cause you to have to go back in there and redo the will rather than just saying my assets. So there's ways to minimize what's going to happen. Distribution, yeah, errors by percentage. So equally, or 50% to this one child. It's for some reason, whatever. You can do that. The executor, you can designate somebody if you like. Um, don't necessarily need to do that. There may be somebody that the person, one of the beneficiaries on the will typically get a lawyer who works with trust type things, and they will take care of those details. You don't have to do a do-it-yourself type thing, but you don't have to name a lawyer who's going to be involved. The executor would be the personal representative who would hire the person who's going to take care of the trust and get it done. Anyway, what they do is they basically settle this thing out, pays the debts, and the distributes the proceeds, and then the trust dissolves in most cases. Guardian, more, this is not a personal finance issue, but yeah, who's going to take care of the kids? Signature, definitely. Witnessed, definitely. Last letter of instructions, yeah, that's other stuff, again, outside of the realm of personal finance. The way this works typically, where we've got Word documents or whatever, they just put out a new will and get it re-signed. You could do a codicil and a document, making changes, or you can just fix it, make a brand new will. Just print out a new one and put some new signatures on it and make it less confusing. If you already have the existing will, again, not a big deal. And in most cases, your original will is probably too specific. I mean, if you really want it and you're getting close to death and you think it's going to be executed, then maybe you want to put some more time into it. But for most of us, just having a general will, a will is the most important thing. How specific it is, it's extra points. Probate, that's the court that talks about this. It's a state court. So again, if you move states, Alaska will is not a Montana will or wherever you're going to go. So um, that would necessitate a new will if you move states. Sample will. I'm not going to go through this in big deal. Um, you'll get some sort of template. Most of these things will be blanks. You'll fill in the data. You'll go to the paralegal. They'll say, does this look correct? You'll whatever, make some changes. When it finally gets kind of letter perfect, then they call over some witnesses and boom, you walk out with your will. But the important thing is that your beneficiaries, or at least somebody, knows where this will is kept. Because, yeah, it's all great to have a will, but if people can't find it upon your death, obviously you're not there to help them out. Estate taxes, these things change all the time for the most part. It's not a huge impact. Usually and now this could change politically, but for the most part, where this happens are things like farms that have huge amounts of assets but little in the way of income, and so they lose the farm because they can't pay the taxes on it. But if you've got a typical estate, usually not taxed too badly. Yeah, so 11,000, no, not 11,000, 11 million in 2019 distributed tax free. So, so no state tax in Alaska, but this is often a attractive target for politicians, so this could change. Whoops. My apologies. Sample will. Living trust, revocable trust, irrevocable trust. These are kind of beyond the scheme again of personal finance. There are certain ways though. Let's say you're somebody who's quite wealthy, or not quite wealthy, but you've got a lot of property, a lot of assets, and you're later in life and you're fixing to lose it all due to not being able to keep up with your property taxes or something like that. There are certain things where you could potentially, make an agreement with the taxing authorities that, upon my death, this property transfers to, the county, the borough, the whoever. In exchange for that, I'm not paying any more property tax, and they may jump at that, and that would be an irrevocable trust. But revocable would mean, I changed my mind. So revocable versus irrevocable, there can be some unusual situations. A living trust, again, not a personal finance issue, but certainly a valid concern, but I'm not going to get into things that are kind of personal issues and um, between you and your lawyer and not in the purview. Gifts, just giving you money to children can happen, but there are limits. And then contributions to charitable organizations. So let's say you did really well, you've got no heirs, or you're like, you know, screw the kids, will be better people by earning their own money, and I'm going to give it away to charity. So, yeah, not subject to estate taxes. One thing I want to touch on real quick here that these slides, I apologize, are rolling around in here. Um, so we talked about living will, power of attorney. Power of attorney is, this does have applications in personal finance. A power of attorney is these people they're not lawyers, the authors of the book. Powers of attorney are very powerful. Um, Generally, I've never ever given anybody a full power of attorney. Full power of attorney would give that person the right to sell your home, the right to sell your car, the right to do whatever with your children. Now, anytime you see power of attorney, you typically want to see limited power of attorney to deal with the disposition of, vehicle, whatever, with a VIN number or something. To give somebody a full power of attorney can be quite dangerous. So anyway, but a power of attorney, you go to a lawyer and let's say you're going to be out of the state and you've got some legal issue or sale of a vehicle or something like that. You need somebody to take care of. You might want to give them the power of attorney, but you will want to have a limited power of attorney and have it with a specified task, not a general, because this person, even if you're not incapable, they could go ahead and do all sorts of things in your name because they have a valid power of attorney. That's quite dangerous. Durable power of attorney, again, getting into other issues. Kept in a safe place. So this is your will, key individual. So like I said, you need multiple copies, hopefully. Um, the beneficiary probably wouldn't hurt to have a copy in their hands. That one with the signatures on it, the original, that should probably be kept, safe deposit box, fireproof safe, whatever, but somewhere where it's accessible when you're not around. And then they get into other things too, which are, again, these guys' ignorance of the internet is kind of showing. It would be nice to have a big sheet of where all your accounts are, but anyway, income tax returns, they can get those bank account information. What they need is account information, investment information. So it's nice to know what you had, when you're not around, but that's about it. So that was retirement planning and estate planning. Not a whole lot of new information, but again, to reiterate on the term paper, you know, this is your one chance to kind of put a person that's in a similar situation to yourself. I don't want your personal information. I'm not going to share these term papers with anybody, but just, for safety's sake, you don't want to give me specific information. But what you do want to do is kind of forecast a person in a similar life situation as you and describe their strategy for how they're going to address all the things laid out in the term paper in terms of, wealth generation and, peace of mind and insurance and investing and, figure out what, Social Security is going to pay for you and if you're going to plan on, sending your kids to college, how you're going to save for that and all those other aspects should be addressed in the term paper anyway. But good luck on that, and we'll talk to you soon.